In progress.
Good evening, fine citizens of Cupertino. This is the City of Cupertino Planning Commission meeting for Tuesday, January 25th, 2022. And as you know, in accordance with Government Code 54953E, it's a teleconference meeting without a physical location. So if you wish to comment, you can email comments by 5 p.m. on Tuesday, as you know, to planningcommission@cupertino.org. Email comments during the times for public comment during the meeting to the commission at planningcommission@cupertino.org, and the staff liaison will read the emails into the record and display any attachments for up to 3 minutes. Of course, you can also use teleconference, and folks following along here on Zoom and in the teleconference, of course, raise your hands and we will call on you. With that, let's go do a roll call. Sarah, over to you.
Good evening. Commissioner Kapil?
Yes, present.
Commissioner Maripata?
Yes.
Commissioner Saxena? Vice Chair Sharp?
Present.
Chair Wong?
Present. Okay. Well, welcome everybody. We've done our roll call. Let's get to the approval of the minutes. So, item number 1, approval of the January 11th Planning Commission minutes. Recommendation action, approve the January 11th Planning Commission minutes. So take a chance to look at the draft minutes if you get a moment. And then, of course, if someone wants to make a motion to approve, please do so.
Chair Wong, if I may interrupt, we do have a desk item for the minutes. There was a minor correction made to the draft minutes in the, I believe, the header of the minutes.
Okay, yep, I did see that. So thank you for that. Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay, we have a second. Any discussion, any comments? Okay.
I have one comment. I believe that dates were changed for the mayor's meeting. For me, I noticed I was put in on October. Although I'm fine, but that's a change. What we agreed upon in the meeting.
Oh, okay. Yep. Happy to switch that. That's not in the minutes, correct?
It's part of the updated mail, which came this afternoon, I think.
Oh, you got that there. Okay. Who switches with you for October? Let's double check.
That I don't know.
Yeah, that I don't know either. Syra, can we make those corrections and just leave that as amended? We'll get the right dates for Commissioner Kapil.
Okay, I'll go ahead and change that.
Okay. All right. I guess the motion with amended changes in terms of the dates for the for the mayor's meeting. We'll do that and add that. All right. Let's call for a vote.
Commissioner Kapil?
Aye.
Commissioner Maripata?
Yes.
Commissioner Saxena? Vice Chair Sharp?
Aye.
Chair Wong?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0-1.
Okay. We don't see any postponements, and so we get to the fun part of the meeting, oral communications. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the commission on any matter within the jurisdiction of the commission and not on the agenda. You've got 3 minutes, and in most cases, state law will prevent the commission from making any decisions with respect to a matter not on the agenda. So if you got a question, you've got a comment, please join us. Raise your hands. Our first one is Jenny Griffin. Please join us, and you've got 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you all hear me?
Hi, Jennifer. Welcome.
Hi. Yes, thank you. Merry Christmas. Sorry. Happy New Year, and Happy New Year again to everyone celebrating. Anyway, with the new year, we have a new legislative season in Sacramento. Politicians have come back to Sacramento or are politicking from home. We're not sure. But there is a bill called AB 1401 by Laura Friedman from Southern California, which is essentially going to limit parking across the state, parking limits. This one was introduced last year, and it wound its way through the houses, chambers, and I think it was put on as a 2-year bill, so it will not be taken up again into perhaps June. May, June, July. I don't want people to forget about this bill. It was discussed a lot last year before we got whacked with SB 9 and SB 10, but it has the potential to be as devastating to this state as SB 9 and SB 10 currently are in their rollout. I hope that we can have I hope that this bill is not just pushed along and like the public is not allowed to speak on it, and then it's passed by everyone and the governor signs it. That's the way SB 9 and 10 went. But this one, we need to have vigorous discussion because we are living with SB 9 and SB 10 now, and it will forever change the way politics are happening in Oregon, Washington, and California. And 1401 is like we fell over the ledge into the rabbit hole. The public has to have a say in this. I will repeat it. The public has to have a say in it. We are stakeholders. And I hope that when 1401 comes along, that it will not just be signed and passed by the governor like 9 and 10 were. I intend to voice my displeasure with it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. Anyone else with any comments that would like to join us, please raise your hand in Zoom. You can find that under raise hand or another comment section, and we will give you 3 minutes. Okay, going once, going twice. All right, we will move on to the next agenda item. So thank you very much for your public comments. Before we do that, right, we're doing the study session before the new business? Okay, I guess we'll do that. All right. Study session, housing element update study session, focusing on the establishment of a housing sites inventory. And of course, recommended action that the Planning Commission receive the report and present and provide input to the staff on the housing element priority housing sites inventory. Let's turn that over to you, Pio.
Good evening, Planning Commission. I did want to introduce you to our city team that is leading the housing element update process. We have a new planner here today, Luke Connolly. He's our senior planner. He comes with a vast variety of experience from various other communities, and we're very lucky to have him here. He is actually spearheading our housing element update process with a lot of support from existing staff that we have. We have John Martier, a senior planner, and Eric Paveda, our associate planner. We're also assisted in this effort by our planning consultant, EMC Planning Group. We have Andy Flower here tonight to help us lead that discussion. They're actually the ones who are going to be presenting tonight. And in addition to Andy, we also have David Massington. He is an architect as a sub-consultant for the EMC group who will lead us through those discussions about, what's a good site for housing, where could it be sited, etc. And without further ado, I will pass the baton on to Andy, and our city staff is available for any questions.
Thank you. Welcome to the new planner. Thank you.
Mayor, Planning Commissioners, if I may, I'd like to begin my presentation.
Yeah, welcome. Please feel free to use the share and take over.
Thank you. Tonight, we're carrying out a study session, and we'll be talking about the sites inventory analysis. This is an essential part of the housing element. And let's see. And the purpose tonight will be to explore patterns of potential housing inventory sites to determine goals for site selection. We'll learn about tools for inclusive public engagement and engage in discussion, and we're hoping that you'll provide feedback for next steps. Our agenda will begin with talking about housing element and just have a brief overview and the RENA numbers. We'll then move on to potential existing sites, and with our equity focus, we'll look at an overlay of the images shared with the agenda packet tonight of the first 5 maps. And then we're open, of course, to questions and feedback. So for the housing element, I wanted to first discuss the roles. So as we put together the document, the plan will, of course, first come to, it'll be reviewed by the Housing Commission for initial analysis, and then it'll be brought to the Planning Commission for recommendation to the City Council, where it will then, once it's adopted, it will then go to the state housing and community development, where we hope for certification. Our project timeline is very tight. We are starting now with the site options, and we've been looking at the sites since we first got on board with Cupertino. We're getting close with the sites, and as we get closer, we'll be able to initiate our CEQA or environmental analysis. The sites are essential because they become the project description for that environmental analysis. So throughout the spring, we'll be looking to put together housing element. So we'll be looking at goals and policies and objectives. And throughout the summer, while that housing plan is in review with HCD, we'll then put our focus on the zoning and land use that may need to be changed in order to be ready for bringing everything across the finish line at the same time. We'll then be bringing forward a CEQA draft for the environmental studies, and we're hoping to have public hearings in late fall, early winter for HCD submittal in January of 2023. So key components of the housing element. We'll be putting together analysis of housing needs, evaluation of constraints, identification of sites and programs to meet the RHNA, and a housing plan with goals, policies, programs, and quantified objectives. We're learning from early adopters how essential it is for a deeper dive with milestones and metrics to be connected with the policies and goals for our plans with the 6th cycle. Another thing that's changed with the 6th cycle as opposed to the 5th is special focus on affirmatively furthering fair housing, also known as AB 686. And we'll be continuing with our public engagement that we've already begun in as many different directions as possible. And we look to commissioners for any new ideas to broaden our outreach and engagement. So what is RHNA? It may well be that all the commissioners here tonight already know what this is, but we want to make sure that anyone watching will be able to learn and join our process and contribute to the plan. So regional housing needs allocation, and we pronounce it RHNA, and this is the number of homes needed now and through the 8-year cycle of this housing element 6th cycle, which is 2023 through 2031. We'll be assigning varying affordability levels for each of the sites that we select. And these numbers are assigned by the Bay Area region by California Department of Housing and Community Development. And specifically, here are the RHNA numbers for Cupertino. So we're looking at 1,193 very low income units, 687 low income units, 755 moderate income units, and 1,953 above moderate income, with a total of 4,588. And we can see with the percentages here that as far as the way that these are dispersed, it's pretty much on line with both the county and the Bay Area.
And Andy, can you remind everybody where these numbers come from as well, so the public understands how those numbers are set and where it comes from? So
Certainly. The full number, 441,176, that gets assigned through HCD, and ABAG then assigns the numbers specifically to the 109 jurisdictions within the Bay Area. And there is copious information about how they come to that conclusion, and the group of people who make up ABAG are selected from throughout the region. And I believe we have links to all of that on our website at engagecupertino.org. And to give a little bit of context about what this means, who this matters to and who would be living in these housing units. When we talk about low income, if it's a single person household, that person would be earning around $82,450. And you can see within this table that maybe our assumption about what would be understood as a low-income salary is maybe a little different than what is in reality for Santa Clara County.
Yeah, and to give people context, I mean, the median income in a state like Ohio is like 31,000. So we have pretty high levels. So
can you go back to the previous slide? So what are the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 means?
Oh, thank you for asking. That's the number of people within the household. So maybe it's a 2-parent household with 2 children. So that would be a 4 person household.
So
and 8 would be like intergenerational, right? So multi-generational.
It's a good assumption. Sure.
So as you have more people in the house, the baseline income needed to qualify goes up.
Correct.
So
even though those additional people, if you had a 2-parent household, of course the kids aren't bringing in money, but there is an assumption that the household would need more money.
Yeah, they need more money for sure, because there are a lot of people, but then there may not be income from all people, right?
Right.
So there is a question here. The less than 80% of area median income, is that correlated to the number of people in households, or is it a static number and which you basically compare against as the number of people in the household increases? As you notice in the previous slide, just go to the previous one. Next one, I think, the one.
So in this
next one.
Oh,
the next one, this one. Yeah, this one. If you notice on the first column, low income, less than 80%, less than 50%, less than 30%, right? So when you say 80%, what do you mean by 80%? Is it for a equivalent comparison for a 1-person household income, or is it a static number which you compare against irrespective of the number of people in the household?
So alternately, the question is, is AMI fixed irrespective of the size of the household?
Is the AMI fixed? Well, the AMI is updated on a regular basis, so this is specific to the year 2021. But then the AMI is proportional to the number of people who are in the household. So just like you see the numbers here, the full AMI is proportional in the very same way.
So if I read this for a household of 8 people, 155,450 will be the equivalent number for 80% median AMI, right?
Correct, for that number of people in a single household. That's correct.
Commissioner Capilla and for the other commissioners, these are numbers that come from census and then aggregated through the county and then applied. So they're not done at the city level, but they're for the entire county.
Mm-hmm. I see, okay.
And if I may, there is actually a website that HUD has where it describes how it comes up with these numbers. And we're happy to provide that information later. I was just looking at that right now, but there's plenty of information on there on the HUD website.
Thank you for your question.
Okay, Andy, please proceed.
So as we begin our discussion tonight about site inventory, you're going to notice that, well, you may not notice tonight, but certainly at our next meeting when we really start to associate numbers with specific sites, we're going to go over that 4,588 number for a number of good reasons early on in the process like we are now. And part of that is that HCD recommends it, and they recommend it for reasons that are, one of the reasons is that it benefits the city. So within this 8-year cycle, because we need to be so specific with each individual site, if a site does get developed and it maybe doesn't include as much affordable housing or low-income housing as was intended. If that happens often enough, there would potentially be a need for a mid-cycle reassessment and possible reevaluation. That could be costly, time-consuming, and it sort of opens up this whole process all over again. So if we have enough of a buffer where if one site is has some flexibility and the next site makes up for it, then that's one reason. Another reason is because we're early in the process. Right now, we sort of have a everything's on the table approach, so that you'll see one of our maps includes some of the most basic criteria, which is a size of a property. So if we are as inclusive as possible now for any site that may become part of our sites inventory list at the end, then we have flexibility for those sites that, for the most importantly, if a property owner has no interest in developing a site, then we don't want to include that site at all. There's a much higher bar in this cycle for HCD to have a clear understanding about things like long-term leases, if it's a commercial property, and whether or not there is property owner interest. So we're doing all that we can to match the criteria that we have available along with an understanding of property owner interest.
And in your profession, oh, go ahead. Sorry, finish. Please finish.
Well, sure. Just one last reason that we're wanting to have such a wide net for sites early on is that we are incorporating this into our mapping program that we've begun with. It's called the Balancing Act, or the Cupertino Housing Simulator. And in our next iteration, we're going to be much more site specific. So in order for people to be able to say yes, we need to also make sure that people are able to give us a clear vote on where they don't want to see the housing.
So, Andy, just in your professional judgment, given the lawsuit that's being filed about the audit to HCD for having inflated numbers, given the decline in population in California, and some other factors that are going on, is that 15 to 30% buffer warranted? Because in each cycle, we have been seeing an increasing tightening of the screws on the cities in terms of the numbers they need to produce. And if we put out 30% and we really need 50% as a buffer, in the next cycle, it just is like we're a gerbil in a wheel looking and going after, like, it's like a mouse going after the cheese and never getting to it.
Well, I understand your concern. One piece of good news is we are just creating capacity for the housing. It doesn't necessarily mean that the housing will get built. And one other thing to keep in mind is incorporated into the assessment by ABAG with each cycle is an understanding of the number of housing units that have been constructed within the previous cycle. So when a community maybe has the ability or the good fortune or the synergy so that housing gets built in addition to that basic number of RHNA, then that gets that becomes part of the process and the analysis for the next round of numbers. So if anything, that would, and I've seen this happen in another community that we're working with, they were able to construct in excess of the very low income units that they that were part of their last round of RHNA. So this round, they have fewer units that they need to produce. So it does carry over within their analysis.
I just asked that because we probably delivered above average compared to our peers in the last cycle, and I don't see any credit for that. And I understand your point. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you for the question. So equity focus and potential existing sites. It's important that we consider with our selection of sites this new legislation, AB 686, Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing. And this is going to become even more part of our discussion as we walk into the policy analysis. But it is important also with sites. So we want to make sure that we're taking meaningful actions in addition to combating discrimination that overcome patterns of segregation, which is both race and financial segregation, and foster inclusive communities free from barriers that restrict access to opportunity based on protected characteristics. So in considering Cupertino housing type, we can see that there's around 70% single family between both the attached single family and the standalone single family, and approximately 30% multifamily. Median rent in these last 5 years has gone up exceedingly in Cupertino, particularly in comparison with both Santa Clara County and the Bay Area generally. I'll spend a little time.
Excuse me.
Sure.
Can you go back to that slide about the rents? So where are 2020 and 2021? Because if you look at the statistics, that's when rents started coming down throughout the Bay Area and vacancy rates going up. So it looks like there's 2 years missing from this chart.
I understand your question, and I'm happy to share your. I'm happy to share the source data. My understanding is the source data for this information is the most recent is 2019.
Okay, because down at the bottom left, it says data source ABAG 2021. And yet
Correct.
We're missing 2020 and 2021.
Correct, but the base data that they were reliant on in coming up with this analysis doesn't have information beyond 2019.
Okay, whatever. Okay.
And what is the median rent calculated for? Like, what kind of accommodation this is taking as a reference? Like, how many, what type of a house this data is depicting? Like, it doesn't tell the size of the house, right?
Yeah, Commissioner Capil, you're asking by square footage or by number of rooms or by type of home, like single family versus condo versus multifamily.
I mean, even for single family, because that's what he said in the previous slide, 70% of them are either attached or this one. This says 70% of them are single family. So when you show that the median rent, is that for a single family type of a accommodation, and how many rooms, square footage, or any kind of a reference for this data?
My understanding is that it's generalized, and so that it's. But we're happy to share with you the base data that.
Yeah, we can dig in. We can dig into the data. I think the way that this particular graph was constructed is that it takes all housing that is being rented and it takes the median off that. So that would be inclusive of single family homes that were being rented as well as multifamily.
Thank you, David. Well said.
There obviously is a premium on single family homes is what this data is really showing, but we don't have the underlying background. So keep going.
Yeah, so I have two questions. Right? So on the previous slide, do we have a somewhat, not the one before you, yeah, this one. Do we have this kind of data for neighboring West Valley cities? I'm just curious, right? So that data is available now. I would like to get access to it. And go to the next slide. The rent increase, does that play a role in how many housing units get allocated for a given city? Is that a determining factor?
That's I don't pretend to assume to know what the ABAG criteria is.
Okay.
Yes, it's a very detailed document, and I try to not even think about becoming an expert on that.
The reason I'm asking is, this rent, depending on which city it is, it's going to be different, right? Like, Santa Clara County, Bay Area average, understood, right? But if you go to Campbell, it might be much closer to, the Santa Clara County or something like that. Go to Los Altos or, Palo Alto, it could be, over Cupertino. So I'm just trying to see, what role this data plays in deciding, how many units get allocated or RENA numbers get allocated for a given city. Just curious.
That's a great point. Oh, go ahead.
Chair, if I may. We followed the RENA process pretty closely in terms of how the units were allocated, and my understanding is the median rent did not really play a factor in how many units were allocated to Cupertino, but there were other factors that did count, and those were whether we were a high resource area. There are just other categories that and there are reports that staff wrote to council about the factors that they took into consideration during that process, and that is also available on the engagecupertino.org website if you're interested.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know, Pew, I was going to point that out. I think there's some great resources on the Engage Cupertino website, and you can definitely see that there. However, I think just to staff in general, whenever we see charts like this that don't compare other cities, it leaves us vulnerable without the comparison data. And it's important to show where Los Altos is, or where Saratoga is, where Los Gatos is, because these number of cities are low density, wonderful educational systems, and high median income. And I think it's good to compare those as opposed to comparing some other cities within the county. Right? And Palo Alto would be a good one to compare as well. So just a thought process. Let's move on.
What we noticed with this piece of information is that there's actually an increase in cost burden with an increase of income, meaning for those who are between 80 and 100% of AMI, there tends to be even the highest rate of being cost burdened. And to be cost burdened is to spend between 30 and 50% of your income for housing. That could be either rent or a mortgage.
Just a point of comparison. Wouldn't that be most of the Bay Area? We often buy, if we have the capability or ability, we often buy homes that are, crazy in comparison to the rest of the country. I mean, it's, the cost burden that most people pay is pretty incredible here. So,
is this data for Cupertino or for entire Bay Area?
This is specific to Cupertino.
Okay, thanks.
And the number at the top, that's the number of actual units or what?
That's correct. That's the
Okay.
number of actual units.
This is incredible. This is 86.5% for 14,335 units spent for around 0 to 30% of income used for housing, I see.
Well, yeah, if you think about, the combinations of Proposition 13 and longtime homeowners, that's where you're going to see that, where they have low mortgage payments and low tax obligations.
That's true, but the seniors that are retired also have a much lower income, combined with their lower taxes and mortgage payments.
That is true.
No mortgage payment, probably.
Yeah, I think the rightmost bar indicates that we have a lot of families that are greater than the AMI, and obviously because they make more, less, they spend less on the housing, right?
Right. Correct. I think that's
Okay. Good data.
So on to our sites inventory. So the background, the requirements for the existing suitable sites, we need to make sure that they're zoned appropriately and that they are available for residential use during the planned period of 2023 through 2031. If there are not enough existing sites to accommodate the RENA for each income category, then the city must identify additional sites.
But, excuse me, just for the previous one, city must identify additional sites. If there is no land available to be allocated, what the city is going to do? Isn't that the case for Cupertino?
Well, as we get to the maps, you'll see that there are some opportunity sites, and we're going to try to grow into more if we can through this process.
Commissioner Capil, it's a forced march towards increased density or creativity. So.
Yeah, it's that we need to go rezone some places. Basically, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Right. So this sentence don't we specify the number of units in each income category on every site?
That's
Or is
correct.
that so? So we would designate it so this last sentence doesn't happen, right? I mean, we can't force anyone to build, but we can at least specify for each site the number of units in each income category.
We can to some extent, but there are regulatory limits for how much we can require developers to build into their
Right. Well,
building.
I mean, obviously, if ABAG says we need to build X percent of a certain level, obviously, you know, we can say, okay, this site needs that percentage. You know, they can't give us a percent, you know, 30% of very low, but then when we allocate, they say, oh, no, you know, you're putting too much very low on that site. I mean, it's like the immovable object against the, you know, irresistible force.
This is not an easy exercise. Certainly not.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
It's no longer a paper exercise like some have described, maybe some past housing element cycles. This one takes a whole lot of working through. So we're excited to work with this team en route to putting together a plan. So for those sites that have maybe been used in the 4th or 5th cycle, there are some requirements that may apply, and the first of which would be that those sites would need to allow residential use by right. So a conditional use permit couldn't be something that would be required of a site that we've maybe used in Cupertino in the 5th cycle and now we want to use again. If it was a vacant site, that's also true. If it was a vacant site and used in both the 4th and 5th cycle, I should say. So the other piece of it is that the density would need to shift if it's less than 20 dwelling units per acre. In Santa Clara County, just within the last couple of months, it's been determined because of the population size that now 30 dwelling units per acre is that is the required density number as a proxy for affordable housing.
Okay.
So
Staying on that slide, please. Sorry, and Vice Chair Sharp, go ahead, please.
Oh, sorry. So for non-vacant sites, I'm thinking of the Hamptons, where we approved, and Irvine Corporation has no interest in following through and building, even though the project is completely approved. They could do it whenever they want. I mean, to reuse that site, do we have to raise the number of units? And even if we did, they still wouldn't build. So what is the point here?
if we have a property owner uninterested in development, then we could either enter into discussion with them to discover what kinds of barriers there might be, if there are any that can be modified, or perhaps we need to look to other sites.
Well, I mean, from a development perspective, and I don't know specifically the site you're talking about, but if there's a project that has not been built and its zoning allows for 15 or 20 units per acre, by giving it a bump up to 30, that may actually make it financially feasible to develop, or that might incentivize the owner to sell it to someone who may develop it in the future. But I would agree with you. I mean, it's a little bit of a tricky situation, but I also understand the realities of construction costs right now do make it very difficult to pencil.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the bottom line. You know, you have an approved project, but the construction costs, the falling rent, the falling demand and the population exodus, it's, you know, they're just not going to build because it just doesn't pencil out. But there's nothing we can do about that, right?
To this, just so everybody knows, resident. Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, just particularly for a site that's already been entitled. but otherwise we can see if there's any other regulatory constraints that we could address.
So just related on the same line of thinking here, can we use third cycle sites that haven't been developed, and do they have to follow 30 DU acre?
Yes. Oh, if it has skipped fourth and fifth cycle, then not necessarily.
Okay, cool. So there's opportunities there that we can look at. Okay. I'm sure they were cleaned over with a fine tooth comb, given that we don't have that much land, but that's why I just bring it up. So
Some of the steps in our initial site selection, where we've been looking at the carryover list of sites used in the past cycle, and sites with existing entitlements, and sites with stated owner interest. And the city has also sent letters asking whether or not owners may be interested in joining this effort. And those letters were sent to owners of all sites listed above, and also owners of sites within the HCD recommended site range of half, and finally owners of sites within corridors that we'll see here in a minute, and that was included in your agenda packet. So now we'll begin with the map layering that we've provided for today's exercise. So with the 5 maps that were described and included in your agenda packet, tonight we're going to see an interplay of those and see them overlap, because I think that's what we all instinctively wanted to do once we saw those maps, so that we can see what new information might come about, and what goals Planning Commission might have in moving forward and thinking creatively, as Chair Wang mentioned earlier, so that we can be as inclusive as possible. So this first map, it's important to understand that the numbers do not coincide with the number of units or a number of sites. Instead, that's a number that coincides with a listing of the zoning for that particular site. Our second map is that map of qualifying properties based upon lot size. So all of these properties are between 1/2 acre and 10 acres. And here we have potential housing opportunity sites. And these, as we mentioned, are carryover sites, or sites that already have entitlements, or sites where there has been potentially even multiple conversations with staff about an intent to build at these locations. Oh dear, I don't know what happened there. I apologize, I'm not sure, I've not had this happen before. Okay, and we'll also look at an overlay of the special areas that are designated at the city of Cupertino. And here we have a small table that's brought over from our Balancing Act, our Cupertino Housing Simulator tool that has been on our website and was part of our workshop that took place on December 9th, 2021. And these are the responses that we received from that exercise. We can see that the majority of people thought that the majority of units should be placed in the heart of the city in relationship to other special areas. And second was North Valco Park, and third was Valco Shopping District. There was also some popularity from Monte Vista Village and Bub Road. And this may just be relative to the size of each of these special areas as well. For the neighborhood areas, the Garden Gate area was most popular.
Can you go back to the previous slide?
Sure.
So what does this color coding means? Oh,
the color coding?
Yeah.
Up here, that's just delineating the different special areas where there's a specific plan.
Just show one side from the other side. It's got no meaning.
Exactly.
Right? Okay.
It's not a heat map of density or anything like that. It's just, yeah.
That's right.
Great question.
And here we're displaying all of the different neighborhoods within Cupertino, and the popularity as far as number of units that people who used the mapping exercise, Cupertino Housing Simulator. We can see that North Blaney and South Blaney and Jollyman were all very popular sites where people recommended additional housing in this next 8-year cycle. Not sure why this isn't showing the full map, but what we wanted to let you know is that we did take into account all hazard areas when we selected our sites.
So when you say people wanted housing in these sites, what people are you referring to?
Oh, yes. Thank you for asking. Well, we had a workshop on December 9th. It was a community workshop, and we blasted that information out to everybody, and we were hoping for a large crowd. And we've also continued to make that available on the website, and I'll show how that's linked as soon as we're done with our mapping here. It's still open and available, so anyone who wants to share comments and share preference and create a heat map of density across both of our neighborhood areas and our special areas to get to that RENA number, then we're able to extrapolate that, and that's what we've shared as an attachment to the agenda packet tonight. So that's along with that map 5. You can see just after that there are some comments that were shared by the public.
Andy, how many people participate in that process? I think that's what Vice Chair Sharp is getting at.
Oh,
and
excuse
I'm
me.
curious as well. So,
Yes.
so far to date.
Yeah, that would be interesting, but I just wondered, when she said people, like what people? Is it professionals or just, or is it, I guess it's interested residents, right?
Primarily, yes, and we were hoping for hundreds. Unfortunately, we got 7. So we're hoping with our next iterative map, it may be that it was so broad in looking at areas, and maybe as we winnow down and look more specifically to sites, we're hoping for more participation, but that map remains open. So we're hoping that the public will come and join the effort.
So I think it'd be important to get more outreach out there. I'm concerned that 7 data points might be skewed. We don't know where all the 7 people live. They could all be on the west side voting for the east side, and they could all be on the east side voting for the west side, and that could create some very interesting controversy. So I think it'd be good to be a little bit more inclusive in the input process, and hopefully we can get the word out. So
sure,
help you get the word out there. So
is there a criteria for site selection based on something else other than the people having an interest in allocating sites on that particular area in that map, or there is some other criteria as well?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I understand the question.
The you have color coded it, right? So the people have, I guess you polled the people and they gave you the feedback related to the site selection for this allocation. So that, right? And so that, so is there any other criteria besides that, that people giving you their own opinion about where the things will be more interesting than any other criteria, like this site is more favorable for allocation because A, B, C, D, these are the criteria.
I think I understand your question, but please let me know if I don't hit the mark here. I do want to be clear that the only thing that's carried over from the mapping exercise, from the 7 people who have participated, are these 2 tables. All of the other maps have been brought together from other criteria, and I'll describe each of that criteria again as we come to each map.
Yeah, the balancing effort, the balancing act effort was intended to get initial thoughts about what general zones without getting into specific sites.
Right. So I'm trying to understand this map, right? So like Homestead, it says some number that's like less than 200, right? And so the Homestead special area is shown on top. Is that what people said? Hey, in this area, we need to go and build 200 units. I'm just trying to understand this data.
I'm happy to share with you what that mapping exercise looks like, but first I thought we would maybe just go through the layers and how they interact with one another.
Let's go through your overlays. I think that'll help give us some context.
Okay.
Great, thank you. So this map did not come from the mapping exercise. This map came from GIS of the city, and it was specific to expressing those sites that are between ½ acre and 10 acres, because HCD has suggested that to be most probable for redevelopment or development. So this is just sort of a baseline criteria. So we wanted to have an understanding of throughout the entire city, where do those size sites exist? So this map only has that information connected with it. But now, as far as outreach, each and every property owner within these blue zones was sent a letter asking if they would like to participate in this housing effort, and if they would like to consider possibly including their property on the housing sites inventory list. So we'll be reporting back at our next meeting here at the Planning Commission and let you know how that's going.
Is there an initial set of response that we have in terms of response rates?
The effort is still so early in its inception. We've only a handful so far.
Okay, no problem.
If I could weigh in quickly on that, yeah, the outreach to the property owners is really about a 2-week-old process. So it's really only 2 weeks ago.
We're early.
Yeah, so we would anticipate getting more, but as of yet, it's early. So in the next couple of weeks, we should have a lot more information.
And this
We're
next
very
overlay,
private people, so don't expect a lot of response yet.
thank you for that. This next layer is the purple layer are sites that are understood by the city to be either already entitled or multiple discussions have already taken place that this property owner is interested in moving forward with development. So these are opportunity sites that are probably our initial ones that are known, all of what you see there in purple. And you can see that they overlay well with the blue because understandably they are within that property size that HCD considers.
So you said no, these are opportunity sites, right? Like, is everything that's in blue is an opportunity site? Is that what you mean?
Everything in purple is an opportunity site. It's the beginning of our list. Everything in blue has the potential to be also included with our list.
Okay. Because this, on the top right corner, it's an Apple Campus 2. There's no way, somebody's going to tear down that donut building and build a housing there, right? So,
Right. But as we mentioned earlier, we are trying to be as inclusive as possible early on to cast the widest net. And the only things that were not included were things that were that had hazards on site.
Yeah, I'm just saying, it's a non-opportunity site. That's what I mean.
Yes, understood. So this next layer that you see here with the orange, we have David with us today, and he can describe a little bit about these corridors and how they were selected and how they overlay.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. I went about trying to identify key corridor opportunities where there was existing low-density development in established transit-forward districts. Especially when you talk about increasing density in areas, transit is going to be a huge bonus. So I didn't look at any of the maps, and I charted this out based on my own personal experiences and looking at aerials. Just to kind of understand where those opportunities were, that maybe there could be some density, maybe there could be the potential for transit-oriented development. So when we overlaid it, it turns out that it matched very similarly to a lot of the opportunity sites that the HCD identifies, including some that are also in the purple. It doesn't mean that all of these sites are warranted for redevelopment, but it's one, through all this mapping exercise, we're trying to find different ways to looking at it, and this kind of shows how the confluence of public transit and existing built form can tell us that there's some opportunity areas.
Oh, so are you saying that mass transit is going to come to these corridors, or
there is existing transit on Stevens Creek and
right,
De Anza.
there's buses, but I mean,
That's right.
mass transit that takes people from housing rich areas to, jobs rich areas, that is not on those corridors.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the South Bay does not have, the most significant public transit system. But for a lot of people, especially in lower incomes, they really do count on the bus, even though it's not the most convenient. So I do want to try to, prioritize areas where the bus has that availability.
David, we also talked about wanting to minimize and avoid displacement of not only existing housing units, but the commercial areas, particularly any beloved retail centers and strip centers.
That's right.
So, yeah, that's something we're dedicated to with this cycle. Housing element.
Yeah, no, we don't want to have food deserts or retail deserts, as well. So I think that's something important. We also need to protect our tax base and our small businesses that are out there. I do have a question in your professional opinion. We do have bus lines that run to the west side by the post office west of 85. Why were those areas not considered in your assessment for increasing density?
I didn't see the size and type of parcel that seemed like it would be a great fit. It is a little bit of a judgment call as you go through there, and I think there may be potential for that. We talked also on another corridor on the east side that could possibly be counted as well. It's an iterative process. I mean, I think we need to take all of these things into consideration.
We're not coming to you with all the answers, but we're
we're just curious. We're just
curious.
That's a good
question.
All these blue opportunity zones are residential right now, or they are a mix?
They're a mix. Yeah, they're both commercial and residential lots. The blue simply is related to the lot size, and it meets the HCD suggestion. And that's not to say that you couldn't take a lot that's smaller than half an acre and put housing on it and count it. But the HCD tries to make it simpler for municipalities when they try to make judgment calls.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on. Oh, oops.
Not sure what's happening here. Well, Luke, it's a good thing I shared this with you as well. I'm not sure why. Let me just try again. Thank you for your patience. Just close it and open it again.
Yeah, while we're doing this, as everybody knows, this is a very important part of the process. Understanding housing element sites are important. I encourage commissioners to take these maps, drive out, take a look at some of those locations, talk to people around, encourage other people to participate in this process. I think it's important to have a lot of input. Not only just from the residents, also some of the businesses in the area. There's impact to foot traffic. There's impact to traffic in general. Also trying to figure out, where people can actually, identify new opportunities. So I think it's going to be very important to do that. Be creative. Think about areas where are commercial at the moment that be converted to residential. Think about places where we can incorporate tax bases with the right density to actually support retail operations. Retail tax revenue is also very important. I've got some creative, wild ideas. We're going to ask our wonderful consultants here if that's possible, but we'll get to that point later. So.
Yeah. Besides traffic and congestion, is there a consideration for the schools and where we are trying to highlight the housing elements and increase the opportunity there? Are there the schools nearby which can accommodate the increase in population there?
I think that's up to us to use that and put that in there. Vice Chair Sharp, do you have a question?
Well, yeah, I was going to bring up schools as well. When I look at the map, it's unfortunately most of the housing sites are in areas where the schools are not under-enrolled, and the under-enrolled schools don't have many sites that would contribute to adding to their enrollment and potentially stopping them from being closed. I think that just falls out of the way Cupertino has been developed. The areas with under-enrolled schools have a lot of single-family homes and not any open space for more housing, but not 100%. I mean, you have the Bub Road area, which would feed into the under-enrolled schools on the west side. You have South De Anza, which would feed into some of the under-enrolled schools, or could in Saratoga. So hopefully we are going to consider school enrollment, both the schools that are currently over-enrolled and the schools that are currently under-enrolled.
I would also suggest, from my experience, I'm working with the community college district in Fremont right now, and I don't know if you have Cupertino specific numbers on what the school enrollment is going to look like, but generally the Bay Area school enrollment over the next 10 years is expected to decline because people are having fewer kids, people are moving away. The Bay Area median age is getting older. So I know from the community college standpoint, they're actually concerned that they're not going to have enough students. And I don't know if that's the case in Cupertino, but that's kind of the Bay Area trend over the next 10 years.
Right. I mean, it's the concern of at least 2 of the high schools and 1 of the middle schools and several elementary schools. But on the other hand, there are schools where they've actually had to move students to neighboring schools because they don't have space for them. So it varies greatly by neighborhood.
And David, what you need to know as context is we're one of the last cities that actually you go to the school where you live. We don't do that creative stuff to drive API scores up or put like a science and tech center in a really poor performing school to fake the averages and make the unions happy. We don't do that kind of stuff. And so that's kind of why this distribution is the way it is.
Yeah, understood.
Okay.
So back to our map layers. This map layer shows a combination of all 4 things. We have the sites that are the appropriate size. We have our opportunity sites as recognized by staff, and we have the corridors. And then the last layer that we have here is self-selected property owners who even prior to our outreach and our recruitment, so to speak, for property owners to come forward and let us know if they have an interest. Where you see these dots are locations where property owners have come to the planning office and said that they have an interest in bringing more housing to their site.
And what I like about this map is that the interest is, it does cluster in some areas, but there is interest across the city. And I think, as we look towards trying to find an equitable solution for this together on where the housing can be located, the most equitable solution usually is that it is spread out and there is opportunity for this type of housing throughout the city because people will live and work in different places.
I'm just going to make an observation in the interest of our comments around inclusivity and equity. You'll notice that the west side is significantly less dense than the east side. And that traditionally creates a lot of tension in our community. So it's just something to think about as you consider the attributes.
Mm-hmm.
This overlay just shows the special areas in relationship to the HCD size properties in blue and the purple opportunity sites. And this one shows the boundaries of all of the neighborhoods to help sort of put our arms around those opportunities that we might have as we hopefully hear back from these property owners with the letters that we've sent out. You can also see the very how closely some of these sites, as far as the ones that are sized for development, how many of them are within the heart of the city specific area. And this is just
just to point out to the comment earlier that literally the west side is kind of empty almost. There is nothing interesting going on the west side, absolutely, because everything is earmarked on the east side. North Blenny, South Blenny, Garden Gate, nothing on the other side, right? If you notice that it is completely skewed on the east side.
My understanding of development over time, the Mont Vista neighborhood was one of the early neighborhoods surrounding the rail that came through. So this is maybe more historically single-family areas. And with that development over time, it's left behind very few sites that would be large enough to consider building a site that can support a number of housing units in one location.
Actually, if I may jump in too here, Andy's absolutely right. The sites on the west side of 85, for the most part, are sites that are single family and they're owned by single property owners. There's some sites which are larger, mostly churches, as a matter of fact. There's a rec center. There's some sites that are a little larger, but most of these are owned by single family owners. And so there are no very large sites that are available for redevelopment on the west side.
Well, except for the Bub Road area, I would say.
Correct. Yeah, and that's identified on the map right there.
Yeah, that I see, it's identified. Like,
And if you want to go higher, near Lehigh Cement, you could potentially do something.
So if a property owner doesn't have interest in developing housing on their site, can we rezone it anyway for housing in the hope that they might change their mind, and in the hope and the realization, making them realize, hey, you're not going to get commercial office space, like in Bub Road, so you're not going to get 8-story of commercial office. You're either going to keep what you have now, or you can put in multi-story housing.
I think this is a real opportunity to rethink areas that would benefit from a change in zoning. And I hear your point. It's certainly it's not essential, particularly for those sites that are new in this sites inventory process. That due diligence is higher for sites that are being reused. So if we've used a site in the 5th cycle and we want to use it again in the 6th cycle, then we need to make sure that there's some property owner interest, or do some discovery about barriers that may be keeping them from considering constructing there. But for sites that have not been used before, if we want to take this process and realize and recognize opportunities to shift Cupertino in ways that is meaningful for the future of Cupertino, this is definitely the moment to be creative. We're at a crossroads.
As defined by HCD and as defined in a Squid Game-like process here, is really the point here. So
the other thing that I would do if I could speak, the other thing I do want to state is that if a property owner specifically sends a letter to say, do not include me in this process, I do not believe, and maybe Andy can correct me if I'm wrong, that HCD would allow us to use that particular site as a priority housing site, particularly where the property owner has said, I'm not interested, I'm not developing.
So in that case, maybe we shouldn't have sent letters out, because somebody might have been mildly interested until they were reached out to, and now they believe, hey, if I say I don't want housing, I'm going to get something better.
Ooh, never thought about it that way. Please go ahead, Andy, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry. With this 6th cycle housing element, is that we can't overthink it. I've seen processes get stymied because people are trying to think about next steps and how we might be able to supersede things. We're trying to just be as transparently iterative as we can, and as inclusive throughout, radically inclusive for people to be engaged and involved, and for this group of commissioners to help lead that process. And we value your service. Thank you for being a part of this.
Well,
If I could say-
I'm just thinking of a property owner that has a underused commercial site and thinks, hey, housing is not profitable for me because the construction cost and the rental market is not going to recover, and I'll just hold out and maybe I can get commercial later. And
Vice Chair Sharp, that would never happen in this city. I don't know what you're talking about.
and maybe it's not even for this cycle. Maybe it's looking forward to the cycle after this, where they say, oh, okay, well, I can keep my single-story commercial, or I can do 6-story housing. So maybe in the next cycle I will be interested. Anyway, and I think we actually need to think about it. We can't underthink this either.
Understood.
Yeah, no, I think it's important for us to think a couple cycles out as well. We want to make sure that we meet our numbers. We want to make sure that we protect our residents, and we want to make sure that we don't overextend things that may be useful later in different cycles. So we don't want to completely give away our complete hand, and also be able to actually deliver for the future cycle. So I think there's a good balance to be achieved.
Chair Wong, I don't know if you lived here back then, but there was a proposal to build housing on Bub Road where commercial office buildings now, and the owner said, hey, these buildings are obsolete, nobody wants them. And the rezoning didn't go through, and then Apple took over all those buildings and renovated them. This is the old Measure X buildings and is there now. So, there has been interest for housing in the past when the demand was higher. But of course, as we all know, commercial office is or was much more attractive to property owners than housing has been.
That's a great point. I really want to get through Andy's presentation. I want to know how many more slides you have. No. I want to know how many more. Oh, that was the last slide. Good,
yes.
Good.
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay. I do have some questions. These are creative questions. And this is really about how we meet our housing elements and what's required. And so I have two for you that just are a little bit out of the box, but may help us think through the problem. The first one is how deep can we go on housing? We always talk about going up. How deep can we go to make those numbers and reach density? So can we build 5 stories down, build proper light wells, and say, hey, look, we're meeting our housing numbers by going down as much as going up? So that's the first question.
Well, you would have to meet all the adequate light requirements. And then the cost of building down like that does come at a real premium. I think the challenge is, in terms of whether a developer would be willing to take it on. I think it would be difficult to convince them to take that on because of the increased cost and the undesirability of those types of units. So I think it's a tough sell. I will just say generally, the thing that usually trips up developers the most is the parking. So it's something that I think every jurisdiction needs to think about, the parking counts and how they want to go after that, because that will take up a significant amount of site area and reduce the amount of dwelling units even on a large site.
Well, the thought process was as you're going up, right? You put 2 levels down on parking, 2 levels of housing, right? Go 4 levels down, and then go 4 levels up for our setback and height requirements. You might be able to get more housing and more density there. So I understand your market and market acceptability. I'm kind of curious as to has anyone tried that yet? Because we could run out housing. Here's the second one. One of the biggest property owners has not been approached, and they really should be. They have a responsibility and obligation. Caltrans. Let's say I want to build housing over 280, kind of like you have oases in Chicago, right? Like you come across, there's property over bridges and stuff like that. Who do we contact for something like that? And I'm telling you, these are just out of the box ideas. I'm kind of curious. Can we build like the equivalent of housing over 280?
So that's an air rights issue, and you would need to secure the air rights with Caltrans. I think you would have to go through Caltrans to do that. That was really in vogue back in the 50s and 60s. If you go on the Mass Pike in Massachusetts, there's like grocery stores
on Newton,
hotels.
Exactly, on Newton, hotels. Yeah, Newton had one, right? Everyone had these things.
Everyone did. There's a premium, obviously, cost.
It's like a monorail for Simpsons, but yeah.
Exactly. But it is, getting through the Caltrans bureaucracy to achieve that would be a lengthy process. It would probably take more than the 8-year cycle, I would imagine.
No problem. I'm just asking why they're not doing their part. But okay, all right. So, thank you. Let's get the public involved. We've been talking for quite some time here, and we've got 2 hands raised. Let's go to public comment and come back again. And let's start with, let's do it in this order. We got Lisa Warren, Jenny Griffiths, Salim Damerji, Jeanette, Jonathan Bruns, and Peggy Griffin. So we'll go in those orders. Let's start with Lisa.
Hi, thanks. I've been scribbling things and some have been answered, but I too was very curious about how many people created maps in the cycle 1 of the simulation. I myself went on there. I have played with it. I've saved some things, but I haven't sent it to be viewed, and I hope I can retrieve what I did before. It wasn't completely, I know it was hard to explain how to use it and et cetera, but it's not horribly clear what you're looking for. To, I think, a lot of people, it would be like, I have no idea. So hopefully people will warm up to that. But existing density zoning for properties that are being considered where they're zoned for 5 units per acre instead of 30 or 80 or 90 or whatever. Are we limited to that, or you can assign more units to a particular site, assuming that it would be rezoned for whatever the heck you want? I'm not clear on that. Maybe that was answered and I didn't get it. It would be really great, instead of having just the maps and the overlays that have been produced by you, to have a list of addresses, the sizes of the addresses, the parcel numbers if possible, so people can go and actually see what they are if they're interested. Because I know some places, I think maybe it was on the map, but it's such a tiny map on a 15-inch laptop. I don't know. And having that information would be very helpful for me. So, and you must have it. And also knowing everyone that you sent a letter to would be very helpful, because if someone knows the property owner and wants to encourage them to do something, it would be good for them to be able to communicate that. Let's see, these isn't all my questions. I had more in there. I didn't even know how to write them down to ask them, so I guess I'm just going to think about it and maybe write in or something. Yeah, oh, I know. The circles, the last overlay, which were circles, property owners who came to the city to say that they have interest, is what they were defined as. They had numbers in them. What did those numbers represent? The circles were numbered 1 through whatever. What were the
Lisa, I believe those are just corresponding to the codes on the left-hand side. So
okay, that I probably couldn't even see.
So like number 1 would be, hey, low density, here's the property identified. Number 25 was neighborhood commercial residential, I don't know, PCAIM or something. I can't read. I need glasses now, but yeah, well, you get the idea.
I have glasses and I still can't read. It's too
Thank you, Lisa, for your comments. So I look forward to getting your input and hopefully get more people to play with the calculator and model that. Let's go to Jennifer Griffin.
Thank you. This is Jennifer Griffin. I hope you all can hear me. This is like the 3rd or 4th housing element I've gone through with the city since 2001, when we came in when Rancho Rinconada came in from the county. And I'm going to say right now, the city staff and EMC and Andy and Luke and David, God bless you. This is like the forced march to captivity land. You guys are trying so hard. You're so brave. But frankly, I have spent the last 3 to 4 years since the housing bills came out of Scott Wiener land and Nancy Skinner and et cetera, knowing far more about the creation of these housing bills than probably I ever wanted to. And therefore, I am forever painted in terms of what we're doing to the city with the 5,000 housing units this is what you guys are up against. I mean, if HCD even thinks that a lot of the people in Santa Clara County don't understand what is going on with these inflated numbers, then they really ought to not be running this. I mean, we've all been staring at this for the last 1 years, and now we're saddled with SB9, SB10. You know, we don't know if we're going to get Wiener housing next door with 4 units stuck on a 5,000 square foot lot. So yeah, to me, this is like a forced march or a bad drug trip. It is, we have, you know, until HCD comes to its rationality, or we get a new governor, or the governor wakes up, this is what we're stuck with. And I don't believe ABAG is capable of handling anything, or HCD or anything else, but that doesn't make your job any easier. So I want to make sure we're not forcing churches or religious sites to sell their land and convert into high density housing. That's what I'm really, really concerned about with this. I'm also concerned that we're upping the value. I think this land, once it's rezoned, you can't downzone. So these property owners, their land is going up in price completely. So we have to understand that. But I think the RENA numbers are completely off the wall, and it's really, really bad. But I'm concerned that we're going to wind up doing more damage to Cupertino this cycle than we have in the last 3 or 4, and it's just been in the last 4 years. The blame lies with HCD, Senator Wiener, Senator Skinner, and the Jerry Brown and the current governor for voting this stuff in. They have really made life in our cities unbearable, and that's
Jennifer,
why we're
thank you
going
for your
after the
views.
local control initiative. Thank you.
Thank you for your views. Yes, and there's a local control initiative that people are looking at to check in the authority of HCD and the governor. Let's go to our next resident and caller, or Celine Demergy. Please join us, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, what an entertaining presentation. I definitely learned a lot about Cupertino. I want to thank the consultants. I think the heat map idea is amazing. It's a really good way to get people to be specific about what they want to see in the city. I hope the outreach increases, but it's a great idea. I also want to highlight what the consultant said about this not being a paperwork exercise. If the city decides that they want to spend these meetings just criticizing the laws, instead of figuring out how to comply with them in a way that fits the city's interests, there will be consequences, specifically a loss of local control. If the city's housing element is not approved by the state, there is a builder's remedy that allows builders to build at any density. The governor just allocated millions of dollars in the latest budget to the Housing Accountability Unit, which is going to take a more antagonistic stance towards cities like Cupertino, who historically have brought negative attention onto the city with obstruction like the obstruction we've seen at Valco. Another way you'll lose local control is if SB 35 takes an effect. If the city does not hit its market rate targets, even if the housing element is deemed compliant, you still would lose local control. So it is in your interest to use these meetings to figure out how to comply with the state laws. One law that is new revolves around the realistic capacity of the site inventories. So around page 20 to 22 of HCD's technical assistance on site inventories, it clarifies that non-vacant sites with an existing use have to have a realistic likelihood of development. And one way HCD says you can figure out that number, if you lack better evidence, is to look historically at what was the development rate of the last cycle. So the number for Cupertino is 6%. It's actually 5.7%. That is a very low likelihood of development, meaning you need to compensate for that by adding additional sites. And partly this is because of how hostile the city is to development. And if you were to address that, you might be able to increase the probability of development on the sites. But right now, it's among the lowest in the Bay Area. I also just want to say, I thought the idea of putting low-income people, middle-class people underground was offensive. If that's not an AFFH violation, I don't know what is. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the MB Law Volunteer Alliance point of view. Hopefully he stays around. He hasn't stayed around, but I want to correct some facts. The issue at Valco is a issue of the developers doing. The land was toxic. Cupertino is doing everything it can to make the housing available and approved. It's unfortunate that we have some issues that the Santa Clara County Fire Department has taken over and said this land is toxic and it needs to be changed or cleansed or approved before anyone can be safely put on that housing. And, not thinking about the health and welfare of residents before they move in there is a serious issue. And it's much more about inclusiveness and equity. We wouldn't want to do that to anybody, regardless of where they are. And so I think that's important. On the issue of basements and digging deep, those are for market. They could be very low income on top. There could be for market on the bottom. It's not necessary for everyone down there. So sorry that someone takes offense to that in an age where everyone takes offense to everything. That wasn't the intent. You can actually design for market housing and create penthouse type patios on the bottom, just like you do on the top. So it's only in the eyes of those who take that offense. So let's move to our next caller. Janelle Stockley, please join us. Or Jeanette, sorry about that.
Good evening. I'm Jan Stockley, Executive Director of Housing Choices. We're a nonprofit that works with Cupertino families of adults with developmental disabilities who in growing number over the past decade have been forced out of Cupertino to live in other communities and not able to remain in the community where they grew up. That's one of the populations that the city's housing element needs to address, but there are many other lower income residents of the city of Cupertino who really are affected gravely by the housing crisis. And I think it's very, very important that members of the Planning Commission really affirmatively reach out and connect with some of your lower income residents and get a real feel for their urgent human need. I'm hearing a lot of comments from commissioners as if this is some sort of exercise that you have to go through to show HCD. And I understand why you might feel that way. But on the other hand, don't forget about all the people, the families that we work with and many others who are counting on you to come up with a realistic plan for creating housing so they can stay in Cupertino. So that was my comment. My question is, I'm going around to a lot of housing element meetings, speaking on behalf of people with developmental disabilities. And what I'm seeing in the other cities is they're, working really, really hard on their general plan and their land use element and their specific plans because they're counting on those zoning changes to be adopted in time for the numbers to be real, right? And so what I think I heard the consultant say is Cupertino is going to look for opportunity sites, come up with the housing element, and then see what zoning changes are needed. And I'm a little bit confused because it seems backwards. It seems like you really should have a good solid plan for doing the zoning changes that you need so that you can come up with a housing element that seems realistic. So that was my question. The sequencing of making the necessary zoning changes so that you can have a realistic plan and doing that at the time of the submission of the housing element so that the housing element can be approved. But, mostly I just want to say the community's counting on you to produce housing. We really, really, really need it. And it's Cupertino residents who need it, not some other folks. It's young adults in their 30s and 40s who are leaving Cupertino in large numbers. It's people who work in your shopping, in your stores. It's people that are going to take care of you when you have to go into assisted living. These are all people that you want to keep in Cupertino. And to do that, you really need to address the housing with all seriousness and not just treat it as an exercise. So thank you.
And thank you for sharing your voices and your work advocating for the for development challenge as well, people that are trying to stay in Cupertino. We appreciate your comments. Please take the time to reach out to us individually. I think a lot of us would love to speak with you. I want to make sure that the perception here that we are not interested in taking this seriously, that is not true. I think every commissioner here takes it very seriously. I think it's the misperception in the media that continues to blame Cupertino. That has been a big issue. Vice Chair Scharf, you want to add something before we get to the next comment?
Oh, so yeah, what what Ms. Stokely mentioned about the rezoning before, before the sites are selected, that's what I had raised earlier. It's like, do we need, and it sounded like from the consultant, if a property owner is not interested in making their property a housing element site, that there's no point in us rezoning it because they have no interest. And, I liked what Jan said, because I think maybe not for this cycle, but moving forward, we might want to think about sites where the owner currently has no interest, but if they knew that the site was rezoned high enough to make something profitable, they might actually end up being interested. And I also want to tell Jan, actually I was outside today, and who walked by but former Mayor Orrin Mahoney and former Mayor Sandy James, and Mr. Mahoney said the site on Mary Avenue, they are moving forward. Everything
Excellent.
takes longer than we wish it would take, but that project has, still going forward, and we hope that we're going to get that developmentally disabled housing. When I was on City Council and Mayor, we were still talking about that, and it would be a great place, and I hope we can get that going faster than it has been. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that. Great news there. Let's move to Peggy Griffin. The floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for the information and for making the preservation of our retail centers a priority. This will help as our density grows. I have a hodgepodge of questions and comments and stuff, so I'm going to go as fast as I can. First, I request that in the future, when you put a graph or a bar up based on input, that somewhere in the corner you put the number of people. I looked at it and thought, oh, thousands, and it was 7. So it really does, it is important to have that number. Let's see, 2. I would ask that you prioritize and explore the sites on the west side that expressed interest in developing, just for the schools and possibly to increase the transportation. Areas that are, I think, should be explored are South De Anza, the Bub Road area, and also the Stevens Creek from 85 to the Blue Pheasant, like down that hill, or maybe not at the top of the hill. Let's see, that's that one. 2 questions. One is, does housing that is not identified as a housing element site get counted towards RENA if it gets developed? And also, what about ADUs? Do you get credit for that? And my last question is, I see I have developmental disabled adults. A group home is very hard to find. It's years of waiting to get in. And I see these residential homes that are going up for sale. Is it possible for the city to buy and develop a group home or hand over to someone to do the group home? And can that count as housing, low-income housing? Thank you.
Oh, great questions. I would turn that to Pew if you'd like to take some of those and see what our consultants also have. It'd be great to actually lead and answer those questions.
Sure. With regard to group homes, I think, and Andy can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that in order for something to count as units, you have to have individual kitchens in them. And in a group home setting, you only have one kitchen, so it would only count as one unit. But aside from that, I don't think the cost of the new homes that are going up with the number of bedrooms, et cetera, they're running about $3.5–4 million, even 4.5, depending on where it is. It is a large amount of money, and of course, we will expend the BMRHF funds in a manner that the City Council authorizes us to spend those. But I think that this has to be the priority of the council to direct us to do something like that. I don't think that can come from staff. But aside from that, Andy, do you want to take the other question that Peggy had?
For both ADUs and, let's see, what was the other question? ADUs count.
For existing sites that sites that were not identified by RENA, but go ahead.
That's right. We don't have to necessarily identify the sites in order for them to count. So any new housing unit absolutely counts towards our RENA.
Including ADUs, just to be clear.
Including ADUs
Yeah, go ahead,
and including anything with SB 9.
Okay, that's wonderful news. Thank you for clarifying.
And I did want to, Chair, if I may, I did want to address the question of the zoning. I think one of the things that we wanted to do with regard to the zoning is we would love to do the zoning concurrently with any general plan amendments that are necessary to accommodate our RENA. Accommodation of the RENA essentially means a discussion of thinking, you know, what the densities will be on these particular sites. Because we do want to make sure that the development form that takes place on those sites you know, is appropriate for the type of what the community desires to see at that particular site and location, and that will kind of lead us down the path of what number can we fit in that particular form. And so we do want that input. We also want input on the shopping centers that you know, the community wishes to dearly hold on to, because that will inform us in the and the Planning Commission and the City Council in terms of which sites should be retained for the city. So I do encourage the community, even those that have just started draft housing simulator exercises, to please turn those in so that we get the information that we need, because we're sorely lacking on that, and we've been trying very hard to drum up interest in it.
Yeah, 2 points there. I mean, it's really important as we increase density, we don't want to create food access inequity. And then that's a very, very important thing as we get food deserts, as we lack the ability to actually find locations for pharmacies, for essential services. It's very important in the overall planning perspective. So please think about it that way. And I actually do want to commend staff, because I believe this approach and the consultant's approach allows us to actually streamline the process of actually completing one big GPA amendment in terms of doing it in piecemeal and without community input. And it's very important to have that inclusive community input. Let's go to our next caller, Scott Connolly. Please join us, and thank you for joining us. Scott, the floor is yours. Your hand is raised. Let's see if we can unmute you, or if you need to be muted. Unmuted,
there we go.
Sorry.
Yep, I think it's on right now. Appreciate being a part of this meeting.
We can hear you. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I had a couple of questions, and they may be a little bit too much in the weeds or too much detail, but I'll just roll through them quickly. I think it's important, and I think at this early stage you probably don't know yet, but I'm curious of the roughly 4,500 new units in this RENA 6 cycle. If the city has any idea how many of those units will be attributed to whatever gets developed at Valco. I imagine Valco could take a reasonably large chunk out of that total. One thing to point out is it's my understanding relative to how HCD may scrutinize the ultimate inventory list that gets put in front of it from the city, but that in this current RENA 5 cycle, I believe that the number was around 1,500 units, and I think that only 11 of those units actually got built in the last 8 years, and it was a small senior development on Stevens Creek Boulevard. In terms of of the 11 units, in terms of the sites that were identified in the RENA 5 cycle, and so I'm just curious if the city's concerned that HCD might scrutinize the list coming out of Cupertino. My third question is that I thought Andy's presentation was great, but on the project timeline page, it looked like you had the formal HCD submittal where Cupertino sends their draft housing element to the state. It looked like on that sheet it was shown after January of 23. And my understanding is that this HCD needs to accept the housing element prior or by January of 23, and that as the city submits their initial housing element, that HCD plans on several rounds of comments with cities back and forth, where there's 90 and 60-day turnaround. So I'm just trying to understand the timing of when that gets done. And then lastly, I'm just curious if you could talk at all about what I've come to understand is it's called the Our Neighborhood Voices Initiative. And it from what I can tell on that website, I think it's kind of an anti-RENA group that is focused on local control versus state control. And it's my understanding the city of Cupertino has endorsed that. And I'm just curious if that only deals with SB 9 and 10, or if that would also encompass, possible state control at the relative to RENA and the housing element process. And again, to the extent you can answer them, great. If not, it's too early. I understand. But
Scott, before we cut you off real quick, are you in the city of Cupertino?
Yeah, I grew up in Cupertino, and my mom still lives there. Went to Monte Vista High School, Kennedy, Korea.
Thank you. I think Vice Chair Scharf would like to answer some of your questions and get to it, and we'll get to some staff and make a comment.
Regarding the current RENA cycle, so there were 5 sites. All 5 of them have approved projects. Unfortunately, Irvine chose not to build at this time, for various reasons.
Stephen, can you pull your microphone closer to your mouth? I think you lifted it up.
Oh, sorry. Okay,
Yeah.
so I was just,
much better. Much better.
Mr. Connolly mentioned the current RENA. Well, first of all, the veranda was 11 units, but the city council expanded it to 19 by getting rid of the ground floor retail, which was not a good location. So, and I think Mr. Connolly may have been involved with that somewhat from his employer, Barry Swenson. And for the other 4 sites, we have, all of them are approved. So Westport, formerly the Oaks, is approved. Valco is approved. Hamptons is approved, and Marina is approved. The problem that we're all aware of now is the market for market rate rental housing is not something that encourages the property owners to build at this time. So I know one of the projects is going to be converting to for sale condos with 20% affordable. And I know Westport is moving forward, presumably. The Hamptons probably not moving forward. And Valco, of course, we're all aware of the issues with the site contamination, which hopefully will be solved. And, once those are solved, they can build either their SB 35 project or, they're free to build something else as well. So I just want to point out the cities don't build housing actually legally based on Article 34 of the California Constitution. We couldn't even build it if we wanted to. But we approve projects, and we hope that the property owners pull permits and build. And so far, that didn't happen much in the current cycle. So I don't know what we do in the next cycle to say if someone takes an entitlement that they are required to build within a certain number of years. But again, we can't change market conditions. I understand why these property owners decided not to move forward with their approved projects. They just didn't pencil out. Thank you.
Yeah. No, it's a great question and a great point there. We made the entitlements. Developers didn't build. The onus is on the developers, and there's market conditions. And so I think that's something we can look at in trying to helping. I do have a related question to staff and to our consultant. I want to know if it's true that any housing element allocations would be tied to the pulling of building permits within the applicable period. And so how do we address that? And I think that's a very important issue in getting to our numbers as well.
Yes, that is true. You have to pull a building permit in order to get discounted from the RENA in that planning period, in that production period, which is that 23 to 2031. And most of our approvals are a 2-year approval timeline. If developers request a longer timeline, it is up to the Planning Commission and the City Council to accept that or approve that. But in general, approvals are only good for 2 years.
No, thank you for sharing that. I think that's very useful as well. So, okay, we have one last individual, and just letting folks know if you want to continue to add input, it'd be great to have input as well from people who live in Cupertino, as well as other people that are calling in from outside as well. So you can raise your hand and join, and we'll give you 3 minutes. Steve Kelly, please join us and welcome.
Good evening. I just wanted to add my 2 cents. Having grown up in Cupertino, having a client currently in Cupertino that's going through the process of getting her property rezoned, there are things that could be done, including simplification of the building code. Her site was an acre. It could have had 5 single-family homes easily situated on the site. Planning department said we needed a cul-de-sac versus a T-axis. Both would allow the fire engine to either back up or manipulate. They wanted the cul-de-sac. We lost the home. It's things like that, especially in the area that you're losing students and having issues with your schools, that are hard to understand. I would add, if you want to increase density, you need to understand that once you go from 6 stories to 7, most developers have to go from wood to steel. So realistically, if you want to increase density above 6 stories, you need to factor in, you need to go from 6 to probably 8 or 9 because of the additional cost of steel construction.
Yep.
Finally, I would recommend looking at your minimum lot size. A lot of homeowners would consider splitting their lot off so their children could stay in the city. I was pushed out. One of my tenants that rents a room from me grew up, went to Kennedy, Monte Vista, just like I did. And just about my whole high school class was pushed out of Cupertino. So if you reduce the minimum lot size so families can split their lot and let their adult children stay in the community, that is one thing that you could do. Most of the lots are much larger in Cupertino. Maybe you have a requirement to do a lot split. You have to live on the lot. I don't know what the law would allow, but I can tell you many of the lots, you can split off a 5,000 square foot lot and put a second home and still keep the basic setbacks, have a 2-car driveway, 2-car garage, and not adversely impact the community. Thank you for your time.
Pete, thanks for sharing your thoughts and your real estate expertise, and appreciate your comments. Okay. I don't see any other questions and comments from anybody here. For many people who were in the class of 1980 through 1990, that was in the period where Cupertino's boom was huge. And of course, property prices went up because of Apple, other tech companies, and the first wave of the internet. Other countries, other counties, other cities also faced that kind of boom, just for historical perspective. We got one more in here. Let's get Barris Evlich, and let's get you in here. Thank you for raising your hand. Welcome.
Am I unmuted? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Please join us.
Okay, great. Thank you. This has been very informative. A couple of things. One is, first, I wanted to agree with the Vice Chair's comments earlier about the communication to potential properties in terms of why it's beneficial for that, in addition to just being a good citizen, to participate in this program. Also, the questionnaire that is required for participation, the owner, as an owner, it has many, many questions that are really more suited to a developer. And if the owner is not going to be the developer, those questions simply cannot be answered. I would certainly suggest that you take a look at that questionnaire because it includes, as I said, many questions that are just not something the owner could answer at this time. And perhaps someone, thirdly, could expand on the requirement that the properties involved that are in the program be permitted within this cycle. What are the consequences, if any, for the owner that participates?
Oh, these are great questions. Thank you for asking them. Let's see if anyone on staff can help you answer and address those questions. And it's a good point on the engineering aspect. I mean, you have to be pretty much an expert to respond to that. Maybe there's some things we could do to improve that. So, Pew, go ahead.
I'll let Andy and Luke take those questions.
Okay, Andy, Luke, all yours.
I can start. The first question that I heard, or the last question that I heard that I'll answer first, is whether or not there's any consequences if a site is included and then chooses not to have something permitted within that cycle. There are no consequences. That is not something that that an individual property owner would face a consequence to be included with this cycle's site inventory list and then opt to not develop within this 8-year cycle. And if I may, Luke, would this be an opportune time for me to take everyone to the site? We did hear this this comment about the property owner interest
Andy,
form.
please do.
Oh, great. Thanks. Thank you.
Please do that. I think it'll help as well. And maybe we can help people walk through that as well as they watch through the recording on how to actually fill that if they're interested.
Just say while Andy's looking that up that if you are a property owner who's interested but you don't have the intent to develop on your own, to express that, you could contact city staff directly and make it known that you're interested but not necessarily being the developer yourself. I think what we're trying to learn too is we want to make sure there are people who aren't sitting on the property or who are disinterested in developing. So if the current owner does have an interest over the 8-year cycle, that would be something good to know whether or not they have the expertise to develop the site themselves.
And we've now included options that are...
Andy, if you get a moment, can you actually zoom in on your screen? If you're on a Mac, Flower++, so people can actually see. Thanks.
So if you noticed, I took us from engagecupertino.org, and you can see here that we do have this website available in multiple languages. So when I click on the English, and then we can see here, I do also want to bring everybody's attention. We are recruiting for a stakeholder group. So that application form is available immediately in the front page. There's also the form available here, and it takes you to the same thing. So when we click on the property owner interest form, you can see that we ask for very, very little contact information, and we have included this answer in all of our options to say unsure, because we understand that if you're a property owner and not a developer, it's fine. What matters most to us is whether or not you're interested. If you are interested and you are pretty sure that there would be a requirement to change zoning, that helps us. If you help us understand what kind of development you might already be pondering, you can still say unsure there. If you're unsure about any of these answers, that is now an option for all of these questions. And it's a total of 20 questions. These questions are related directly to what HCD is asking us to provide for a little more certainty about whether or not a property that we're choosing to include on our site's inventory list has a reasonable chance of being developed within that 8 years. But I do want to repeat again, if you select to be part of this and then you choose to not develop within this 8-year cycle, there are no negative consequences.
Andy, actually a real good point made by Barris, and unless you're like an engineering consultant or a redeveloper, it's almost as if you need to get a PhD and understand what HCD is doing. So maybe there's a way to help people understand what the answers are to those questions, like a quick video or something like that. I don't know how many people are going to fill it, or if it's worth the time, but I think that would help. I think that's a very, very important piece because some of those people really don't know how to answer those questions, and you might get a lot of other, but it does map very well to the HCD requirements, which is nice. But I just think, think of the number of consultants here trying to figure this out, right? I mean, they've made a process super complicated, very hard for people to understand, and if we want to involve people to actually help with the housing element, maybe we can make it easier for them. So, and a lot more inclusive that way. Okay, we're done with questions. Everyone's gotten their 3 minutes. We thank you for participation. It's very, very important. We're excited that so many people have participated. I think it's a very critical part of where the city goes forward. I cannot understate that we have worked very hard. The consultants here have worked very, very hard to make this a inclusive and equitable, a process that's streamlined, a process that works towards what HCD is trying to accomplish and what we're all trying to accomplish in terms of improving housing affordability. If people doubt that, I really think that please provide your input and comments. We're open to hearing that. We'd love to hear what your suggestions are. And let's turn it back to our commissioners. So we're going to bring back the commissioners for any discussion. And I think we can close this out since it's a study session and probably take a break in the next 5 minutes as we've been going pretty hard. Vice Chair Shar?
Oh, thank you. So I wonder if the consultants could discuss the cost of different heights of buildings. I think one of the speakers during communications mentioned the cost, and I was looking it up during the meeting. So it sounds like it's very expensive for a developer to go more than 7 stories. So when we're doing these site selections, are we getting a sense of what the property owners are interested in building and how tall?
Well, as part of the site selection at this point, we're not looking for that level of detail, but I can talk generally about construction types and how those relate with cost. Generally, due to the construction costs that we're seeing in the Bay Area and nationally, the thing that's penciling most easily in terms of height is a 4-story wood structure. When you see denser sites have 4-story wood over a concrete podium, but that type of thing is not penciling great. As you start going up in height, you can move in from type 5 to type 3 construction, and you can get up to that 6 floors, which is a little more expensive, but generally wood construction. Once you get above that and you get into what's called life safety, which means the top floor level is 75 feet or above, that's when the costs really start to go up because you have additional life safety components to add in. And at that point, like one of the commenters correctly said, you don't build a 7 or 8 floor building. You have to go higher than that to actually make the construction costs work. But I think for Cupertino, the target for the tallest, densest is probably somewhere in that wood frame 4 to 5 floor range. That's developable. 4 floor with parking, which is called a garage. It's called a Texas wrap. They do a lot of this in Texas, where you take a parking garage in the middle, you wrap it with a wood frame. It's very efficient. It's fast to put up. It just takes a larger site. For podium construction, you can get a slightly smaller site. But I think, whenever we look at these sites, we'll make some judgment call about that to a certain extent. But I think over 4 to 5 floors probably isn't realistic from a cost perspective right now.
Actually, can you just give us a rough idea what it is a cost per square foot for construction for a 4-story building versus 7? I think people need to jive with it. Is it $400 a square feet, right, versus like $600 a square foot, given our prevailing wage laws, given our safety laws, our earthquake retrofit, the regulations that are here, as opposed to building in Texas, which is definitely about $200 a square feet. So.
Yeah, building in Texas, the land costs are much, much lower in Texas. The labor costs are lower. And I would say in the Bay Area for a wood frame project, you're probably looking maybe $550 to $600 a square foot. If you start getting into the higher levels of construction, you're looking $700, $800 a square foot, I would think. Steel prices are really high. Wood prices are really high. That's not going to last forever, but it is affecting the market today. But what we tell everybody is it does take a while to plan stuff. So by the time you actually draw it out and plan it, go through approvals, the cost structure may be quite different by the time you're ready to build it.
Very good. And just for people's reference, home values are running about $1,000 to $1,200 a square feet here in Cupertino for single-family homes. So.
And Chair Wong, I point out that our veranda project in Cupertino, which was completed 2 or 3 years ago, those are all studio apartments, and they were about $780,000 per unit to construct those studios. So that's the kind of thing we're looking at here in terms of construction costs. So obviously, to build affordable housing, we're going to have subsidies from the state government, federal government. the county doesn't have enough money, and obviously the city doesn't either. So we're going to have to look forward to getting the developer will have to get some kind of money in order to build these projects. They won't pencil out on their own.
If I can just weigh in real briefly on that, there's generally two typical ways that affordable housing gets built. It's like you're talking about, you get a subsidy. There's a lot of great affordable housing developers like Bridge and Mercy that do a fantastic job. They understand exactly the economics of the projects and how to tap into that. But they alone cannot develop all the affordable housing. And it turns out that market rate projects with an affordable component are probably responsible for the largest amount of affordable housing. And they do it through subsidizing the construction of that affordable housing through a percentage of the cost.
Right, and that's what we hoped for in many cases. And when I talk to developers about their approved projects and why they're not building, it's like, it might have made sense when market rate rents were skyrocketing and they could subsidize the BMR. But the reason they're not building now is that they just can't charge enough rent to subsidize that that BMR housing. And I don't know when that's going to change, in the Bay Area. But I mean, you can look at the rent graphs and see what's going on.
Let me give every commissioner 3 minutes to share their thoughts. And
all right, I'll
go
be
around
quiet.
No. I'm just afraid some people here might actually have to do the bio break since we've been going this far and this long. So we'll go Commissioner Maripatla and Commissioner Capil, and then I'll close with some comments and then thank our staff and our consultants. So go ahead.
Yeah, so I'd like to thank the staff, for all the data that they put together. It's very informative. One suggestion, when you put up, charts like bar charts and some of those, maps, as one of the residents commented, please include, the context, right? Because I also misread, exactly like, she was saying, wow, thousands of people participated. I didn't know what those numbers stood for. And looks like only 7 people participated. So I think that's a good input from resident, and I agree with that. I have a question for the consultants, right? So I've been on the commission for some time, and I keep hearing like sometimes when it gets very tiring, like when people just constantly keep attacking as if we are blocking this development activities when we hear all these comments that there are real challenges, the construction cost and then the cost of building 7 stories or 10 stories, right? So I just have a question to the consultant, like do you see the same kind of a attacks, for lack of a better term, by people for other commissions, where when you go and do the same work that you're doing for us for other cities? I'm just curious, right? Because I feel like we unfairly get pinned or blamed, right, for as if we're standing in the way. Like the Valco project is approved. Nobody's in the way of building that the developer building the project, right? And so is the one the what is that property called right next to the Apple, right? That one is approved too, right? But they're not building. So why is that people have a misconception that we are in the way of building these housing units?
So I appreciate this dialogue that's happening, and it's good questions from the commissioners. But if we can turn this back to this REA discussion and the site selection, if somehow you can frame your response, that'd be really good.
Yeah, let's frame the response, and let's do it this way. And thank you, Michael, for providing the legal guidance there. Let's ask the question as to what do other cities face and what are other people saying? You've had those learnings. You've go to different cities, and I think I think the public would actually value that input and help us understand how we fit in the larger process.
Well, I'll let you weigh in on this, Andy, in terms of your other housing element work, but I'll say generally that your experiences are not unusual in the Bay Area. We do hear a lot of that at different cities, and it's a struggle to build housing, and it has a lot of different reasons, and it's it's market forces, it's zoning challenges, it's parking, it's all of that. So it really depends by municipality, but it's very typical.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Let's go to Commissioner Capil. Let's get your thoughts, comments, questions before we wrap up.
Yeah, it was pretty good actually. A lot of information in there, and the only thing I just kind of want to point out, or maybe it's a suggestion there, that when you consider housing element site selection on a map or something like that, are you? I'm sure you're considering the transportation and other aspects of the community which is going to populate these housing element sites. So, is there transportation plays any role there? Because the reason is, what I saw in that housing site selection map, it's very uneven. I mean, to put it mildly, it is one set of area is a heavily dominated site selected, and other area is completely vacant. To put it very mildly, this thing. So that could be for various reasons, because as somebody said, that the property owners are not willing to accept those sites for development or for various other reasons. But my point is that it could be because there is a good transportation on that side of things where you have selected those housing sites. And the other side, we are not so easily commutable. That could be one reason. Or second reason could be the cost of that, is that I do know that West Side has very big family lots. It's not that they are 5,000 square feet or something like that. They are 10 to 12,000 square feet lots. So effectively, you could split them. And if I look at the map, I saw very little commercial plus residential on the West Side. Most of that was located on the East Side only. If you can go back to that map, you will notice that. Or except those 25, 26 circles on the West Side, everything else was low density development on the West Side of the thing. So there is definitely a reason out there. It could be a cost, it could be transportation or something of that nature, which probably can be taken into account to even out the distribution there. That's all.
Yeah, I can just comment.
Question? Okay, go ahead.
I can comment generally on that. I think Andy can talk a little bit about this as well. But the blue sites that are shown, the reason you don't see so many on the west side is it's an area issue. So the HCD says that typically the suggestion is the smallest site that you would take would be half an acre, which would be 21,780 square feet. And most of those lots just don't meet that definition. That is not to say that you could not develop a smaller lot and count it towards the housing element. But just in terms of their suggested criteria, it doesn't fall into that range.
So
the other
David,
thing that
related to that question. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. The other thing that our mapping doesn't take into consideration is the effects of SB9. So most of those sites on the west side are actually rather good candidates potentially for SB9. We'll be getting further guidance from HCD in this coming month about how to apply SB9 for our housing element, how much we can count those potential sites. That there are opportunities if we wanted to incentivize the act of SB9 on the west, then there could be an openness. There could be ways to incentivize that. So if that's a policy question that we want to take into consideration, there was a question earlier about our timing, and I just want to reiterate that we've got to get our CEQA, our EIR initiated soon, and that goes to your question about transportation. Transportation will be fully analyzed as we get to the EIR process, but we have to start that soon if we're going to make our deadline. So that's why we need to get our sites underway as soon as possible.
Just a hypothetical.
Sorry,
go ahead, Pugh.
I just wanted to add a couple of things to this discussion. I just wanted to clarify for Commissioner Kapil's sake and for anyone else that quite did maybe get the map. The first map with the blue sites is really just sites that meet that site criteria, as David pointed out. So essentially, those are not chosen sites. Those are not like any sites that staff has chosen or the consultant has chosen as sites that would be rezoned or included in the housing element. That's just a map shown for purposes of discussion to allow the commission to tell us, which sites it might wish not to consider, for example, among those blue sites. The other thing that I wanted to point out is, yes, there are some sites that are fairly large on the west side. Those are up in the hills. They have pretty steep slopes and things like that. But they're also in the high fire severity zone areas, and HCD may or may not accept those sites because they're in the high wildfire zone areas on the priority housing list. So, and Andy, correct me if I'm wrong about that also. So those are not necessarily shown on there. But all the other sites that are shown on there are basically sites that are potentially developable or underdeveloped currently in the city that meet that the site criteria that's recommended by HCD. So it's just a very simple mapping exercise. There's been no analysis done on it because, as you can see, it includes the Apple campus, both the Apple campuses, and a lot of other developed sites as well. So it's just put the information into GIS and it spit out that map.
I love ArcGIS. Go ahead. Commissioner
Yeah,
Kapil,
I mean, I'm sure more to come, I guess. I mean, so my comment was whatever was put forward, not to say that it was wrong or right. Basically, I mean, there's, of course, more thought needs to be given in that, probably.
So Pew, actually related to question 2, what Commissioner Kapil was asking here, and related to some of the comment we got from the public. Could we just take the entire west side and just drive the DU up to 20 and, and then just say, let's go count that puppy?
Oh, yes, we could. Absolutely. The council, the city.
I mean, the west side has never experienced that. And I'm sure that would actually, increase. I mean, I'm just hypothetically, we can do that, right? And that would just increase a lot of support for local control. I mean, it'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, and HCD does have guidance on that. So if you do take a whole neighborhood and you upzone it, you can only take credit for 10% of those units. So you could upzone 1,000. Come on. Upzone 1,000 properties, you only get a credit for 100. So I'd be careful.
Well, we should change that rule then.
I would be careful in doing that, but that's what they say.
No, totally understand. Okay, this is great. Okay, Commissioner Kapil, you're done. You take your hand down and.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Great questions, great comments. I just want to make some comments here. I've talked to a numerous number of residents. They do have some concerns. They want to make sure we protect our religious sites. They want to make sure that these places of worship are not discriminated against and that they are protected and not turned in, because they're typically 5 acres, 10 acres, some of these religious sites. We've talked to other individuals along the way, and there was a comment, many people have actually expressed is, if we continue to upzone properties that don't get built, are we just rewarding folks for waiting? And so can we actually minimize that? So if we upzone, we gave you the zoning, you better pull a permit, let's get building, let's stop waiting, right? That's nothing we can control as a city, but maybe there are things that we can do from a policy perspective to improve that. And then I do want to thank the consultants. I know you spent a lot of time here, spent a lot of time working on this. So David, Luke, and Andy, thank you very much for the work you've done. I think it's very helpful. I really appreciate the process we're here to ensure we've got a equitable, inclusive, fair housing element that represents our residents' interests, that represents the region's interests, that also takes into account of equity across the neighborhoods here, and also thinking about what the long-term impact for housing will be. And then, of course, I really do hope we get revised RENA numbers as there's an HCD audit going on, and maybe that will actually impact and hopefully give us that are much more realistic numbers that represent where our population growth is and the trending of the population growth. So I think all those factors are probably going to come through, and really appreciate your work. And with that, I think we can move on to the next agenda item. Thank you for participating. Thank you for the public input. I think that was amazing, and really appreciate all that.
Can I say something else before you
yeah, please, Luke, go ahead.
Yeah, because we're scheduled to come back on February 22nd before you to kind of wrap this up. And this was sort of a lot of information tonight, a lot of the maps, just to get people familiar. Is there anything in particular that would help you that we could prepare for February 22nd that would help you in terms of site selection, something we didn't have tonight? Because I think, as Andy has said, we have a pretty ambitious schedule to meet the HCD deadline. And February 22 is going to be coming up quickly. So I would just like to know, being new to the city, if there's something that we could provide you that would help that meeting.
So facetiously, it would be nice to have this in the metaverse so we can experience this. I went to 20 of the 26 sites of people who actually said, I want to volunteer my property. I was kind of a pain in the butt. I wish I could have videotaped it and everyone else could see it. But I think it's anything to help the public understand the impact of what development will be like, or the benefits of what development will be like. And I don't know how any better way to visualize it. I know these layers actually were very useful, but it isn't until you actually get onto the property site and you're just like, oh God, that's not going to work, right? Or you go in there and it's like, oh God, we could actually do something great here and this would be amazing, right? So I think any way to do that, to put some pictures to the sites, might even be more helpful just for now. I'll see what other commissioners believe. Commissioner Capil and Commissioner Sharp, Vice Chair Sharp, go ahead.
Is there any cost imperative to the site selection based on the choice, and how much that sharing done if you are doing a commercial plus residential or things like that on that? Is that the property owner bears that, or is that a different options around there for that? That might be one of the hindrances of not opting your property, or could be one of those things. Probably just clarifying that in your data, or just putting a bullet like that probably might help. I don't know about that, at least.
It's a good point. I mean, yeah, we do need to look at constraints, which can include fees and a whole range of things. Anything that could hinder property development, we need to identify in the housing element. But yeah, I was just really trying to focus on February 22 because I know these meetings keep coming up, to try to advance the discussion towards actually selecting sites. So I appreciated the chair's comment about maybe having more visual information that focuses on the site, so you could look at that and see if there's anything that could be an obstacle. But any thoughts you have would be helpful to staff.
Certainly, among other thoughts, like what kind of heights the commission might be considering when they're looking at these sites, for example. It'll give us an idea to bring those images back to, because our expectation of or our idea of what development could look like or should look like on a particular site may not be the same as the commission's, and it would be very helpful to us to kind of visualize what the commission wishes to, kind of what direction they might want to go in.
No, I really appreciate that, and thanks for asking for that input. And I encourage the public to also use the model and simulation as well to go do that. Vice Chair Sharp, I'll give you the last question. And Andy, are you asking a question? Sorry, are you raising your hand? I want to make sure I'm not missing out.
Oh, I was just thanking you for directing people to the simulator, and you can find that on that same housing Cupertino.org. So thank you.
Yeah, no, it's great, and it's a great tool. I hope more people use it. We need more than 7 data points. So we need at least 30 maybe to get some level of statistical significance. But yes, Vice Chair Sharp, please go ahead.
Oh, okay. So for February 22nd, if we could have an idea of the heights that these property owners are thinking of building. I know it was mentioned that practically speaking, these are not going to be, super high buildings just because it's too expensive, but also are they thinking of rental units or for sale units, and all, because that affects the schools, because if it's rental, you get a lot more turnover of students and you get a higher average student impact. If it's for sale, the people stay there a long time, their kids finish with the schools, but they don't generally move because of Prop 13 or other issues. So if we have an idea, I know that the trend now in Cupertino has been to do more for sale, just because of the market conditions for rentals. So, I think it's great to have for sale housing, but it does mean fewer new students for schools and areas that might benefit from more students. So if we could have some idea on February 22nd of what these site owners are thinking of building, or maybe it's too early for that. I don't know, but it would be nice to have.
Or we can actually think about options for base year value transfer, right, for people to hit 55, and that might actually accelerate that as we think about that and school impact. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Pew.
I was just suggesting, yes, certainly as property owners, come in and talk to us, and I'm not sure how many may even contact us before the 22nd. But to the extent that we have that data, we'll be happy to share that data. But it's not just what the property owners want to build, but what the city may want to envision on the property. Whether that's there are no apartments on the west side, for example, or there are fewer ownership units on the east side, or whatever that is. That kind of intangible input might also help us kind of come up with the zoning standards that can be accommodated on property.
Yeah, we could get realtors to knock on doors and find 4 adjacent property lines and say, hey, we'll buy you out and build an apartment complex here. So you can encourage folks to do that.
So, Ray, one other thing that has been happening throughout the state is these conversion of existing hotels into housing with Project Home Key. And I know we've got 2 hotels approved in Cupertino, and given the long-term results of business travel, they may not move forward. And there's other hotels that may even want to convert to housing. So I think some of those existing hotel sites, I'm not sure if they're in our list. I
don't believe they are, but we did contact them when the Home Key funds were available last year, I believe, and they were not interested at that time.
Right, but beyond Home Key, maybe they're interested not in Home Key, but in converting their site to housing, tearing it down and building
potentially
something else.
Sure.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. We've exhausted all comments and questions here. Really appreciate everyone here. So thank you for being here, David, Andy, and Luke. Thank you for spearheading this on the staff side. We appreciate everybody's help. We're going to take a 10-minute break, and let's come back here at 9:15 for those following along, and we'll get to the next agenda item. So thank you, everybody. We'll be back in 10 minutes. taking the break and for the public that's following along, and really appreciate. Yep. And yeah, for those listening in, this is great. And thank you for enjoying the Metaverse conversation. A little update on CES. We should be talking about the Niners LA game. That's going to be a very fun game for the NFC champ. We know who's on which side there. We might have some transplants along the way. So, all right. Well, welcome back, everybody. I am super excited. Item number 3, the election of the Planning Commission chair and vice chair and committee representatives. That's item number 3. Recommended action: elect Planning Commission chair and vice chair, appoint representative and alternates for the ERC, DRC, and Housing Commission and Economic Development Committee, and discuss the hearing schedule for 2022. Before we do that, I want to thank everybody. I want to thank the staff. I want to thank the commissioners that are here today. I've had a wonderful time being chair. I'm not interested in running for chair again. I'll make that clear. But if you do vote me in, that'll be very interesting. But yes, and we're doing the selection process. Before we do that, I want to check in with Michael to see if there's any rules we need to follow so that we are in compliance, and go from there. Pew, you've got your hand raised. What would you like to add?
I do believe that you also got an updated staff report as a red line document this afternoon. I just wanted to mention that for the record.
Oh, yes, definitely. Please check the updates on the website, and they'll have that discussion. So here's, the recommended action is to point that discussion piece. Selections for chair and vice chair are typically based on seniority and are rotated among commissioners. The vice chair is typically selected by the commissioners as the current chair. The current vice chair is Commissioner Sharp, but it doesn't have to follow that. But that's typically the tradition. I'll read out the committee so the public knows. Environmental Review Committee. Historically, the chair of the Planning Committee serves on the Environmental Review Committee. However, the commission can elect another commissioner. The Planning Commission's recommended ERC member will be accepted formally by the City Council at one of its meetings. In the DRC and the Design Review Committee, according to our CMC code 2.90.050, the vice chair of the Planning Commission is the chair of the DRC. Therefore, the commission only needs to select one commissioner as an alternate. So we'll do that process as well. Michael, please lead us through this so we don't get confused. And then the Housing Commission, as a matter of interest, and not because there are requirements to do so, the Planning Commission selects a representative to attend Housing Commission for ongoing coordination. The Planning Commission, as observed at these meetings, is not a voting member and will have no term of office. The selection is usually determined by the voluntary commissioner interest. The current representative may be reappointed or a new representative may be selected. And of course, we have an economic development committee. Each year, the Planning Commission sends a representative to the EDC to help enhance awareness and communication with Cupertino business owners, which is something we probably should do more of. The EDC is an ad hoc committee and is currently under restructure. Within the City Council, the Commission may choose to reappoint the current representative or appoint a new one that may be selected once the restructuring is completed. So thank you, Sarah, for putting this together, and a very, very good note for all of us to look at. So, okay. Michael, lead us through the process if there's something we're missing, just so that we are in compliance with our laws and bylaws.
I don't think you're missing anything, Chair Wong. You're currently still chair. This is going to be a democratic process, and if there is a majority vote should go through these. That's fine, to the extent that for at least for the duration of this meeting, you continue to be chair, and so you're happy to take nominations. People can self-nominate themselves, and then there's a second, and then Sarah can take a vote, and I think that would be the process.
God, we're 4 people. It could be a 2-2 vote. It could get exciting here, just like our NFL playoffs. All right. Anyone with a nomination for someone to be chair? So
I nominate, Vice Chair Stephen Sharp to be a chair for this year.
I'm happy to second. So here's my full endorsement. Okay. Any discussion here? So anybody else you want to nominate?
Commissioner,
Stephen, first of all, do you accept?
Are you okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm willing to be chair, although I'd be thrilled if Chair Wong would do another year. But I understand that I think have you done 2 years already? I don't know.
I've done 2 out of 3 years.
Right.
And I'm hoping to build additional talent and bench strength here in the city.
I'm happy to take that on if nobody else is interested.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion, any points, any comments? Anyone else from the commission want to add anything? Okay. Sarah, let's take a vote.
Commissioner Kapil.
Aye.
Commissioner Maripata?
Yes.
Commissioner Saxena? Vice Chair Sharp?
Aye.
Chair Wong?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0-1.
We got a comment from Pew. Go ahead.
I just wanted to check with Michael, and Michael can correct me if I'm wrong. Is there any need to have a public hearing on any of these items?
I don't believe we need a public hearing. So are you suggesting we should take public comment before we have this?
That's what I mean. Yes, public comment.
Oh, that's a good point.
That's a good point. That's a good point. We probably should take this is the next agenda.
Before we vote, let's rescind that vote. We have a nomination in place.
I was looking for anyone with their hand raised during that. I didn't
see any hands raised, but we didn't ask either.
We didn't ask.
Let's definitely do
you
it.
can go back and ask if anyone.
Yeah. We'll go back. Rescind. Okay. So let's ask for any public comment as well in this process. If you've got a comment or question, please raise your hand. You've got 3 minutes. So. Thank you for asking the question, Pew, and thank you, Michael, for confirming. Okay, we have no comments. We will go back to the vote. So, all right, let's retake the vote, Sarah, in case commissioners have changed their mind.
Commissioner Kapil?
Yeah, aye.
Commissioner Maripata?
Yes.
Commissioner Saxena? Vice Chair Sharp?
Aye.
Chair Wong?
Given the comments, I will abstain. Just kidding. Aye. Let's go.
Motion carries 4-0-1.
All right. Let's do the vice chair election. And I would like to nominate Commissioner Maripatla. So.
Oh, I'll second that.
Okay. Let's move to public comment. Actually, we should discuss among ourselves and then move to public comment. I believe that's the structure. So sorry about that. Any comments?
No, I've been
Mooney, do you
impressed with
accept?
Mooney's work over the last year.
Would you be interested? Right. So.
Yeah, no, certainly, I would be happy to work with Chair Stephen, right? So it brings a lot of experience, and so certainly, I'll be a good understudy for him.
Okay. Vice Chair Sharp, you had some comments. Commissioner Kapil, we'll get to you as well. Vice Chair.
No, I think I'm thrilled to support Mooney as well. I think over the past year, he's proven himself to be asking specific questions, good questions, and has the interests of the community at heart.
Okay. Commissioner Kapil, anything you want to
add? I personally do think that he's been asking relevant questions in the commission, and as long as you are there, so your experience will be always available. So I have no objection.
Okay. Yeah, no, I support Mooney. I think you've been very active in the community, and it's a good progression of all the different commissions you've been on, and really the active piece here. I think it's very important for everybody here on the commission to have an opportunity to see how it works from all different angles, and really, really appreciate you thinking about the vice chair position. So, okay, let's take a vote, Sarah.
I think you're going to ask for public comment first.
Oh wait, I thought we did. Oh, public comment. Let's do that.
Someone.
Okay, there is someone. All right, Lisa Warren, please.
I only raised my hand so you wouldn't be wasting your time doing the public comment. So yay, go ahead, whatever.
Okay.
Just keeping you straight, Ray. That's all.
Thank you.
And actually, thank you all, and Commissioner Saxena as well. I'm sorry he's not here tonight. Thank you.
Okay. All right. With that, let's go back. Let's take a vote.
Commissioner
Thank you, Lisa.
Aye.
Commissioner Maripata?
Yep.
Commissioner Saxena? Vice Chair Sharp?
Aye.
Chair Wong?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0-1.
Okay, so now it gets a little bit more confusing because we have to add specific members along the way. So I just wanted to make sure that we are adding the right folks. We need to add a additional individual right now. Believe it is that to the, I always get the ERC, DRC mixed up. So let me double check. We have to add an additional person to the DRC. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would like to join that DRC.
Okay. All right. So addition with future Chair Scharf, the DRC will now be staffed with Commissioner Kapil. So very good. And that's not elected. We just assign those, and if I remember that's correct. And then back to the Housing Commission, if that's correct. I think that's we don't really. Do we have a representative that wants to go to the Housing Commission?
If I may,
voluntary.
yes, let me go ahead and share my screen so that way you can see what I have here. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So I'll go ahead and I'll make sure to get this out to the commission once it's finalized at tonight's meeting. So we were on design review committee. That was, I believe Commissioner Kapil volunteered.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the vice chair is also part of it as well, right? So we had So I don't know who the chair is of the design review committee, but it should be the vice chair typically.
Okay.
So Mooney and then Sanjeev should be.
Okay, so then we would still need the alternate.
I'm happy to serve as an alternate as needed. And then the future Chair Scharf will be the ERC representative.
Okay, sorry.
And then the alternate, does someone want to be an alternate?
I can be an alternate.
Yeah, we should check with Commissioner Saxena too sometimes. But yeah, he's not here. So, wait, he lucked out. What's going on? No, just kidding.
I think it was the right meeting to skip.
No, that's when you assign him to do things that no one else wants.
Yeah,
to
let's
do.
assign him as the alternate. No, just kidding. We should do that. And all jest, and all kiddingness. For those who are following along that might not necessarily get the humor. Okay. And then Housing Commission. Anybody want to be a representative here today?
I can be alternate. This happens twice, right? This meeting?
Once, I believe.
Once a month.
Yeah, I can be alternate.
Yeah. Even though I was alternate on this one, so I never had to go. I think Sharp was taking care of it. But on the design review committee, as an alternate, I had to attend few. So just to give an idea, right?
We volunteer commissioners at Saxena. I'm just kidding. We should check with them first. So let's leave that open for now and see what happens in the next meeting. We should be able to beat that before the second Thursday. So
yeah, I'm willing to do the EDC. I'll do the EDC if it ever
comes back. Yeah.
Comes about. Yeah.
It seems like it never happened last year. Is that right?
No, it did not. I was going to say I'm happy to be an alternate if it comes back as well.
It might change now because I believe the city hired an economic development person. So maybe we will get some kind of committee for that.
Okay, I think we have chosen everything we need to choose. And Syra, when you get a moment, please, send us the updates and, of course, the relative committee meetings that we're going to have to attend. I think that'll be useful.
Will do. And I just want to confirm, since we're on this topic for the mayor's meeting, at the October meeting, who was going to replace Kapil at the October meeting?
Oh, no, I was pointing out that then you can remove me from January, I can do October. That's not, if that is possible, because I'm on 3 of them.
Oh, I see. So take you out of the January one.
January, yeah. And
Okay.
put me on October one. That's fine.
Understood. Okay. So then we will need somebody for the January meeting.
So I'll take the January one because I took this one and so this January, so it's spaced out, right? So
Okay, thank you.
Great. I'm just jotting these down as fast as I can. I'm like, oh, good idea. So, all right, cool. I think we've succeeded in completing this piece. Any other comments? Any other things that we need to do before we do the transition?
I thought there was one TBD, isn't it?
The TBD is whether Commissioner Saxena would be interested in being part of the housing committee, I believe. Sorry.
Well, I would just like to thank Ray for his service as chair for the last 2 years. I think he's done a wonderful job. He's accurately pointed out things that needed to be said. So good job, Ray.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
I echo Stephen's comment, right? So both Ray and Stephen as vice chair, I think I'm amazed, the level of details, that you both, and the understanding that you have on the process and the codes and all that stuff. So, it's a great learning experience for me. So I'll learn more working with Stephen closely. So we're lucky to have you. So thank you.
Thanks. Okay, with that, thank you, everybody. We will move on to our last item. And I believe that's we're just reviewing something on the Planning Commissioners Academy, which would be really important for everyone to attend and get an update of all the wonderful bills that have been passed over the past year or two. So, Pew, what's going on? What date is it? And what do we need to do to sign up?
Certainly, I just wanted to put this on the agenda so that the commission has this information. It is essentially trying to make sure that, and my computer just froze. So I'm trying to do this. So yeah, it is in San Ramon, I believe, this year.
Oh, cool.
So it's not very far. It will take place from March 16th to March 18th of 2022. This Syra and our management analysts will be very happy to sign up any planning commissioners that are interested in attending this session. I believe it is still in person. I have not heard that it is going to be virtual, so it is something that I have.
Something, Pew?
Sorry?
Are you sharing something like?
I have not shared it, but I can.
Okay, sure. Please, yeah.
Of course.
I want to see the dates and see, if I can block my calendar. Did you say it's 3 days?
18th to the 20th, I believe.
16th through the 18th.
Oh, sorry. I'm just trying to share my screen here, and I can't.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, it's 16th through the 18th at the San Ramon Marriott.
Yes.
So
16th through the 18th at the San Ramon Marriott. And there are the courses that are available are all in here, rather the sessions that are in here. So there's a lot to be learned from this. It does have interesting sessions on the housing laws. It does talk about, stuff related to planning, essentially. And it also has some SB9 stuff in there.
Yeah, so I would like to attend. I'm looking at my calendar. It looks like I blocked these 3 days on my calendar. So.
And if it's of any help, the conference schedule is currently shown on the screen. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, March 16th, 17th, and 18th.
Okay. Yeah, if you go early, you'll get a walking tour of San Ramon and what they're doing, and then on the first day, and then the second day is a lot of the different educational sessions. You might want to get updated to the bills. You can meet some of the folks who are at HCD, ask them why they do the things that they do, and what we can do to improve things. You've made a lot of developers, builders, other city officials, and it's a really good place to build coalitions across the state. So definitely worth going.
So great. I mean, if anybody has any questions about signing up, I would just suggest you send an email to Syra, and like I said, she'll be happy to help, or I can help coordinate it too, either of us. So please feel free.
So how does this work? Just send you an email telling you that I want to attend or something like that?
Correct. Yes, and we'll take care of the registration process, and basically we just attend it. We'll send you all the information.
And travel's covered, and you can file an expense report for that as well.
Yeah. And this will be a in-person one, right? Not.
As far as I know, and that flyer still says it's in person. If things change, it's going to be. It might change. Let's put it up.
Barring any new variant.
Yes, the stealth variant in the Santa Clara County. But anyway, that aside, currently it is scheduled to be in person.
Okay.
No. Yeah, and the other thing too is, well, if you do get a chance, there's some great resources from previous years. You can always see the presentations as well after the fact, and they provide those so you can get a refresher before you get there as well. So good stuff to read.
It's a good way to learn about being a planning commissioner and learn about planning in general.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Look forward to going to that and hopefully see everybody there as well. Okay, with that, I don't think we have any other agenda items. Please correct me if I missed that. And if that's the case, we can adjourn. Wait, no, in case you have announcements and other things. So let's see if anybody has any other announcements and commission staff reports. So any staff reports?
So curious.
Oh, hold on. Let's do staff reports first, if there's any. Pew, I think we're good, right? Okay. And commission comments. All right. Commissioner Kapil, go ahead.
I have no comment.
Okay. Commissioner Maripala.
So I don't know which commission it is, right? So as soon as the new chair was elected, so the rest of the meeting was conducted by the new chair. I don't know if that's the procedural thing or like I think it was in the bike commission, right?
I think we're doing the appointments that start in the February term, so that I think it might have been in an election year. That typically happens where the commissioners haven't all been elected yet.
Okay.
I think that might happen or if a city council member or someone gets promoted to a different job or position. I think that's what happened, if I remember. Okay.
So yeah, so I attended the mayor's meeting last week. I think it was last week or the week before, and just trying to pull up my notes. I'll send the notes to you, Sarah, and copy you. So just generally I provided update on what we have done in the last two meetings because there was no meeting in December, and then there are updates from various commissions, and so I captured all of them and I'll send the notes to you. Okay.
Thank you, Vice Chair Scharf. Any notes, comments?
No.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, thank you, everybody. With that, we will adjourn. Congratulations to the new chair, Scharf, and the new vice chair, Maripala, and congratulations there. We are attending the January 25th meeting of the City of Cupertino Planning Commission. It is now adjourned. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.